So here I built out this simulator that covers all the variables that we discuss in the article that allow you to find the perfect CLV to CAC ratio for your business considering your liquidity. And I'm just going to run you through the variables first, and then we're going to configure a couple of scenarios so that you can see the effects. So the first one here is the net average order value that you generate in your first order, and then customer lifetime value needs to be based on the contribution margin 2, so your net revenue minus logistics costs, cost of goods sold, and transaction costs. In our case, our margin is 50%, so the customer lifetime value I generate from the first order is 23. Now I'm saying here that I have a CLV extension from the first order of 75%. So another 75% of my initial CLV value is generated throughout the lifetime of a customer, which would then bring me a total customer lifetime value of 39 euros. Now, my total CLV to CAC ratio after the lifetime of a customer is completed is 2.7, which means that my customer acquisition cost is 15 because 39 divided by 15 gives me 2.7. Also, marketing budget and growth is an important factor if you want to consider liquidity. So I'm starting here right now at a 10K monthly marketing budget, so not too high yet, but I do want to grow 7% every single month. Now we talk about the life cycle and the value distribution. So these 75% here are generated over a lifetime now of 12 months in this example. It's obviously something where you have to go into your data and check how long it takes for your customers to generate their lifetime value, and the distribution of that lifetime value is linear. So what does that mean? I made a little example here, this tab here. So basically we have the same numbers here, and now I kind of created different scenarios. Ideal, which is like the concave example that I talked about in the article, which is usually the case, linear and seasonal, and they're all starting out here at 20 to 50 because you're generating 50% margin on that 45 in the first order, and then depending on the distribution, they generate money at different points in time, and basically the gaps here between those lines are the gaps in cash flow that you have between the different models, and it might not look like a lot. So here we have like a 5 euro difference in cash flow, but if you now multiply that by thousands of customers, the difference in cash flow can become quite significant. And then if we go back, we also have the cash conversion cycle, which is 3 months in our case, and I have a CM2 margin of 65%, which basically tells me that 35% of that revenue is generated by the COGS, and I have a starting cash balance of 100K, and my overhead or my fixed costs are 20%. And now in this scenario here, I have a business, the orange line is my starting cash position, which is going down a bit, but after a few months I'm sort of reaching break even, and I'm very slowly starting to generate cash. But now if I just make some small changes to a few variables, that becomes significantly different. So let's say that I don't just generate 75% or another 75% extra CLV after the first order, but I double that to 150%, which obviously, because the CAC is derived by the CLV to CAC ratio, which I won't change, will increase my CAC. I will just sort of change the liquidity because now a larger portion of the CLV is generated at a later point in time. So if I now say go to 150, let's see to where we get. Okay, so now, like I said, my business is just as profitable as it was before. My CLV to CAC ratio is exactly the same, but now, instead of having a small dip initially in my cash balance and then increasing my cash balance over time, I'm actually continuing to stay negative here and eventually running out of cash. And now if I just make another small change in my CLV to CAC ratio at 2.5, just a 0.2% change, and now my profitability, basically my liquidity problems moved up by more than half a year. Well, what I could do now though is, let's say the life cycle of my customers is not 12 months, but it's actually just 6 months, and the value distribution is more in the ideal, this concave state, not a linear state. By just changing the life cycle from 12 to 6 months, I'm basically back to, having a business that is running on break even. If I now go here again, change my cash conversion cycle to 2 months on the logistics side, and maybe I don't have overhead costs of 20% of my revenue, but instead just 15%, I have a profitable business and build up a cash balance of 600K over time. So yeah, these are just some examples and variables. Like I said, you can have CLV to CAC ratio that is greater, like 3, but it takes you a long time to generate that CLV. Let's go here for 24 months maybe as a more extreme example. So here's a scenario that is technically very profitable. So we have a CLV to CAC ratio of 3, but a majority of the CLV is generated after the first order and also over a long period of time. So even though we technically have a very profitable business, I'm running into liquidity problems. So that now compared to a business that has a CLV to CAC ratio, that is a lot lower. So, instead of 3, I'm at 2.2 now, but I did shorten my CLV extension from 200 to 50% and my life cycle from 24 months to 3 months. And even though, on a CLV to CAC ratio basis, I am a lot less profitable, I actually do have a profitable business that I can operate and grow. You can create a copy. I will also link the sheet in the article. You can just create a copy of the sheet and then input your values and sort of play around. What parameters give you the best trade-off between growing the company as well as preserving your cash balance? In most cases, with a typical margin structure, the CLV to CAC ratio you likely need is going to be in that 2 to 3 range. In most cases, that's the case. There are a couple of outliers with extremely short life cycles or extremely long life cycles where you might need more or less. But in general, 2 to 3, somewhere in that range gives you the best trade-off between growth and liquidity. So I hope this was insightful and helps you a bit. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comments and I'm happy to answer those.